deep sea is, in many ways, our planet's final frontier, a colossal expanse that occupies up to 95% of Earth's living space, yet remains mostly hidden from human eyes. It's astonishing to realize that we've mapped more of outer space than we have of our own seafloor. Whenever you hear about the wonders of the ocean, it's easy to imagine sunlit shallows teeming with bright fish and colorful coral reefs near the surface. But the deeper you go, the more mysteries unfold. In this silent realm, light fades until it disappears entirely. Pressure towers like a crushing weight, and life forms transform into adaptations so bizarre you might think they came from distant planets. The question is, why do we know so little about a place that is so unbelievably massive? This mystery begins with a simple yet baffling fact. We haven't collectively devoted enough resources, time, or technology to truly understand the deep sea's secrets. Even for those who make it their life's work to explore, the challenges are relentless. Thousands of pounds of pressure per square inch, subzero temperatures, and utter darkness almost impossible to replicate on land. It's not surprising that more people have ventured into space than into our darkest oceanic depths. And yet, for anyone fascinated by the unknown, the deep sea offers astonishing revelations every time a submersible descends. Imagine uncovering new species daily, glimpsing organisms that glow in the dark through natural chemical reactions, and discovering ecosystems fueled not by sunlight, but by the Earth's own geothermal energy. This is the story of that hidden world, a place that compels us to keep asking questions about our planet's true nature. But to truly appreciate this expansive realm, we have to start at the beginning. Where exactly does the deep sea begin? You'd think such a fundamental question would have a straightforward answer, yet experts can't fully agree on a precise boundary. That uncertainty is our first clue that we're dealing with a domain so vast and peculiar that it defies simple categorization. It's time to delve deeper into this puzzle and find out why defining the edges of the deep sea might be harder than it sounds. After all, it's one thing to say it's a place of eternal darkness and freezing temperatures, but it's another matter entirely to pinpoint its actual starting point below the waves. Defining the deep sea. Surprisingly, there's no universal consensus on where the deep sea officially begins. Some oceanographers claim that once you dip below 200 meters, roughly the depth at which sunlight starts to dwindle, you've entered what can be called deep. Others point to 500 meters, referencing a point at which seasonal changes in temperature and other variables become negligible. Still others argue the threshold lies at 1,000 fathoms, around 1,828 meters, beyond which darkness prevails, and life must be radically specialized to survive. These discrepancies illustrate that our planet's waters aren't a neat, uniform environment, but rather a complex gradient of light, pressure, and temperature conditions that alter the very fabric of existence. What everyone can agree on is that descending even a few hundred meters below the surface reveals a domain where sunlight is scarce or non-existent, leading to fascinating adaptations in marine life. The ocean itself is typically divided into 5 main layers: the epipelagic zone, the sunlight zone, mesopelagic, twilight, bathypelagic, midnight, abyssopelagic, abyss, and hadopelagic, hadal zones. Each layer hosts its own ecosystem, reflecting the subtle ways that temperature, pressure, and the remains of organic matter drifting down from above shape the local food web. Think of the water column as a gigantic stack of shifting puzzles. At roughly 200 meters, most bright light fades. Past 1,000 meters, you enter near complete darkness. And below 4,000 meters, you're effectively in a realm dominated by near freezing temperatures. In some parts of the oceans, like the deepest trenches, things get so extreme that only the hardiest, strangest life forms can handle it. It's no wonder that the average depth of 4,000 meters is daunting enough, let alone those extraordinary trenches pushing beyond 10,000 meters. Where exactly we choose to mark the start of this world may ultimately come down to convenience, but what we do know is that the deeper you go, the more alien the landscape becomes. Scientists also note that around these lower depths, biological activity slows and seasonal changes become almost undetectable because the environment is so consistent. Dark, cold, under crushing pressure. The standard definitions of seasons or temperature shifts that we rely on near the surface simply don't apply. The organisms here live in a realm that's unlike any other on Earth, which prompts the question, how do they endure such extraordinary conditions? This leads us into one of the deep ocean's most mesmerizing aspects, its residents, each one seemingly engineered by nature to thrive in an abyss that would be lethal to most forms of life on land. But knowing where the deep sea begins is just the first step. The next big revelation lies in the creatures that inhabit it, for they have evolved techniques and traits that seem, at first glance, more magical than scientific. For people watching from home, learning about these animals can feel like hearing about cryptids or mythical monsters, yet they're very real, just rarely observed by human eyes. So let's venture deeper and discover the mind-boggling strategies these deep-sea denizens use to survive. Evolving to survive. Picture a world stripped of almost all light, chilled to near freezing, and weighed down by a relentless force that would crush most air-breathing organisms in an instant. This is the daily reality for deep-sea creatures. Far from being random or monstrous, their bizarre bodies are masterpieces of adaptation. Some fish appear almost entirely transparent, blending seamlessly with the surrounding darkness. Others, such as certain deep-dwelling crustaceans, wear bright red coloration, a paradoxical tactic that appears black in the dim light, rendering them nearly invisible to potential predators. Then there are those that emit their own glow through bioluminescence, an ingenious use of chemicals to create light that can startle predators, attract prey, or make them vanish against faint beams from above. At extreme depths, bone structures become liabilities, too rigid, too easily crushed by immense pressure. In response, many creatures adopt jelly-like bodies with minimal skeletons and specialized proteins that can withstand forces that would shatter a standard submersible. Water pressure isn't the only threat either. Temperatures can drop below zero, thanks to the high salt content of deep ocean water. So many species rely on unsaturated fats in their cell membranes. This adaptation helps keep their biological processes functional, even when the surrounding water is so cold it could freeze most creatures solid. These are not superficial oddities. They're fundamental parts of survival in an environment that pushes life to its limits. The deeper you go, the more likely you are to encounter species that look more extraterrestrial than earthly. Giant eyes in some mid-level dwellers allow them to capture every flicker of light that filters down. In absolute darkness, other species have lost functional eyes altogether, navigating by senses we scarcely understand. Meanwhile, the dance of bioluminescent spots, stripes, and patterns becomes a swirling ballet of color in an otherwise black void. Yet, if there's one fact that truly underscores how resourceful deep-sea life can be, it's the daily discovery of new species. Every time scientists deploy a remotely operated vehicle or manned submersible, they often return with images or specimens of organisms never before documented. This constant flux of discoveries reminds us that what we know of the deep is still just a fraction of what exists. Every deep dive is a fresh revelation of how life finds a foothold where logic would suggest it shouldn't. However, learning about these creatures isn't as straightforward as dropping a camera overboard and recording what happens. The exploration itself is fraught with unique challenges, from punishing conditions to insufficient funding. The next step in this journey is to understand why diving into the deep sea is, in many respects, even more difficult than sending a rocket into orbit, and how that difficulty has shaped the story of deep sea exploration. The challenges of exploration. Exploring the deep sea is like venturing into another planet nestled within our own. The pressure in some deep sea trenches can soar to over 15 billion pounds per square inch, enough to crush a standard submarine as though it were a soda can. Even the most advanced research vehicles have succumbed to these forces. In one particularly dramatic case, a high-tech submersible imploded at depths exceeding 10,000 meters, illustrating that no matter how far we've come, nature's extremes still hold the upper hand. To stand a chance, submersibles must be designed like miniature fortresses with reinforced hulls capable of withstanding unimaginable weight. However, this necessity drives costs up exponentially, creating a major funding gap that has consistently hampered deep-sea research. Consider that space exploration budgets in many countries dwarf spending on oceanic expeditions. The ratio can be staggering. Billions are poured into satellites and space telescopes, while ocean programs scrape by on far less. That imbalance reveals a fascinating contradiction. We know more about distant planets and moons than our own ocean floor. Because of these funding shortfalls, deep-sea missions often happen in short bursts and rely on collaborative efforts from scientists worldwide. When a significant dive does occur, the window of opportunity can be razor thin. Equipment must function perfectly. The weather and surface waters must cooperate, and the mission must achieve its objectives quickly. Further complicating matters is the sheer remoteness of deep-sea sites. Some of the most interesting spots, like the Mariana Trench in the Pacific Ocean, require days of transit just to reach, followed by a meticulous descent that must be planned down to the smallest detail. What's truly astounding is how few people have actually experienced these depths in person. While hundreds of astronauts have gazed upon Earth from orbit, fewer than a handful of individuals have traveled beyond 1,000 fathoms, about 128 meters, into the ocean's darkest realms. Even fewer have visited places like the Challenger Deep in the Mariana Trench, the deepest known point on Earth, at over 11 kilometers below the surface. It was only in 1960 that Swiss oceanographer Jacques Piccard and U.S. Navy Lieutenant Don Walsh made the first successful journey to Challenger Deep aboard the bathyscaphe Trieste, remaining there briefly before returning to the surface. Decades would pass before film director James Cameron undertook a solo descent to the same region in 2012, capturing footage and samples that reshaped our understanding of life at extreme depths. Yet each time a daring explorer plunges into these murky waters, the payoff is enormous. They bring back jaw-dropping photographs, new data on previously unknown creatures, and sometimes even evidence that rewrites marine biology textbooks. These expeditions prove that the deeper we look, the more surprises we find. And that's precisely what makes the next stage in our journey so thrilling. The rare access we do have often leads to daily, groundbreaking discoveries. Rare access and surprising discoveries. Despite the crushing environment, every mission to the deep sea seems to expand our knowledge in ways we never imagined. One striking fact is that researchers can discover multiple new marine species in a single day. Over a recent year-long period, the World Register of Marine Species recorded 1,451 new finds, many of which hailed from deep water habitats. That equates to roughly 4 new species discovered each day. To put that in perspective, imagine checking your favorite news feed each morning and seeing a headline announcing a freshly identified creature so unusual you'd think it came from science fiction. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Some scientists now suggest we've only identified around a quarter of all marine life on Earth, a fraction that grows smaller as new expeditions reveal more species. Others believe our current catalog covers even less, perhaps as low as 10 or 15%. The truth is, the deep sea is so vast that pinning down an exact number verges on impossible. Each new dive, or ROV, remotely operated vehicle, deployment can lead to entirely novel families of life forms. When you think about it, this makes the deep sea arguably the most dynamic frontier for biological discovery left on our planet. One phenomenon that highlights the ocean's capacity for the extraordinary is deep sea gigantism, where species in deeper waters grow to astounding proportions. Crustaceans like giant isopods, giant amphipods, and the Japanese spider crab can dwarf the shallow water relatives you might see near the beach. The reasons behind this tendency are still debated. Some propose that the colder temperatures and increased pressure could extend lifespans and slow metabolisms, allowing creatures more time to grow. Others point to scarce food resources that might push organisms to become larger in order to store nutrients more efficiently. Regardless of the specific mechanism, it's yet another reminder that the deep sea follows its own rules, ones that can defy our usual understanding of biology. Every day, we're left pondering what else might be out there. Could there be monstrous squids, even larger than the ones already discovered? Mysterious crustaceans, the size of small cars, hiding in trenches never glimpsed by human eyes. While these sound like tall tales, the deep sea's track record shows that such speculations can sometimes be closer to the truth than we'd expect. But mammoth creatures are only half the story. Equally astonishing are the hidden ecosystems that thrive where we once assumed life simply couldn't exist. Ecosystems powered by forces entirely unrelated to the sun. Hidden ecosystems and thriving life. It was 1977 when a research expedition stumbled upon one of the most surprising finds in modern science: hydrothermal vents on the ocean floor. Before that, many scientists firmly believed all life depended, directly or indirectly, on sunlight for photosynthesis. Yet here were underwater chimneys spewing mineral-rich, superheated water, hot enough to scald unprotected skin, that teemed with giant tube worms, exotic clams, and previously unknown bacteria. These vents defied established logic. Instead of sunlight, the primary energy source was chemosynthesis, a process by which bacteria convert chemicals like hydrogen sulfide into nutrients. This discovery turned our understanding of what makes life possible on its head. Since that initial find, numerous other vents have been identified, often in regions with volcanic activity. The environment might sound toxic, dark, hot, and loaded with chemicals, but vent communities thrive by capitalizing on these harsh conditions. Towering tube worms can grow more than a meter long, their bodies nurtured by symbiotic bacteria that directly process vent chemicals. These worms, along with specialized crustaceans and other organisms, form a vibrant pocket of life around what looks like an undersea volcano of boiling water. The lesson here is clear. Life can be astonishingly adaptable, even in places we once deemed inhospitable. Hydrothermal vents aren't the only wonders hiding in the depths. Deep-sea coral gardens also flourish in near-total darkness at depths of up to 6,000 meters. Unlike their shallow water counterparts, these corals do not rely on sunlight-based algae for energy. Instead, they snag tiny organic particles drifting by in the current. Over time, they can form elaborate reefs that act as homes for numerous marine species, from small invertebrates to juvenile fish seeking shelter. Scientists have identified more than 3,300 types of deep-sea corals, and that number climbs with each new expedition. Some of these corals, such as black corals, can be thousands of years old, making them among the longest living organisms on Earth. Imagine the stories embedded in their skeletal layers, millennia of ocean changes recorded in silent living pillars. As if that weren't impressive enough, many of these deep water organisms produce chemical compounds that have enormous potential in fields like medicine, agriculture, and even cosmetics. Certain sponges, for instance, seem to manufacture substances akin to antibiotics, effective at combating inflammation and viral infections. Others may offer insight into halting the division of cancer cells. As scientists broaden their search of these underwater gardens, there's no telling what sort of life-altering breakthroughs might be lurking in the deep. The ocean has always been a treasure trove of discoveries, both natural wonders and potential solutions to pressing human challenges. Yet while these pockets of life are remarkable, they shouldn't distract us from the fact that the majority of the deep sea floor is nothing like the vibrant reefs or swaying worm colonies near vents. Most of it is eerily calm, covered in a blanket of soft, featureless mud. And even that vast emptiness harbors untold stories, if only we can figure out how to look. Stark contrasts on the seafloor. For every dazzling hydrothermal vent or bustling coral metropolis, there are thousands of square miles of seafloor that appear barren at first glance. Fine sediment accumulates endlessly in the ocean's deepest basins, creating a stark, lunar-like landscape. Visibility can be shockingly low, sometimes less than a few dozen meters. Without robust lighting, a submersible's cameras see nothing but an inky void, swallowing the pale glow of spotlights. In some ways, the endless plain of mud is as enigmatic as the more flamboyant reefs. Creatures that live here often move slowly or lie in wait for food particles drifting down from the world above. Many remain hidden beneath the soft sediment, surfacing only to snatch morsels carried by the faint currents. Others roam just above the sea floor, adapted to scavenge whatever falls from higher waters, be it dead plankton, fish carcasses, or occasional debris from human activity. The idea that our ocean's floor can resemble an alien desert is both humbling and thrilling. We might call it empty, but that emptiness is relative to our own limited capacity to sense and measure. In reality, countless microbial communities flourish in the sediment, and small, specialized invertebrates manage to eke out a living. With improved technology, researchers continue to find unexpected forms of life in these flat expanses, confirming the ocean's ability to surprise us at every turn. as you envision this silent realm. It's hard not to wonder whether we'll find more exotic life in the deep sea than beyond Earth's atmosphere. Some argue that if we're searching for alien-like organisms, we need look no further than our own oceans. The extraordinary diversity of shapes, sizes, and survival strategies beneath the waves is enough to rival the speculation about life on Mars or the moons of Jupiter. As technology progresses, and hopefully more funding flows toward oceanic research, we may begin to unlock more of these secrets. Yet for now, the deep sea retains its reputation as the largest and perhaps most mysterious habitat on the planet. There's a fascinating irony in our relationship with the deep sea. On the one hand, it's our planet's dominant environment, a colossal realm that spans the globe from pole to pole. On the other, it remains as elusive as the far reaches of outer space. Modern submersibles and ROVs have offered tantalizing glimpses into this domain, pictures of bizarre creatures, vent fields bursting with life that relies on volcanic heat, towering coral gardens filled with uncharted biodiversity, and endless expanses of silt that hint at hidden secrets. Each mission below the surface shows us how little we truly know. Every new species discovered is a testament to the boundless creativity of evolution, honed by conditions that would pulverize most terrestrial life. With more than half a century separating the first successful descent to Challenger Deep and the most recent visits, we're still at the dawn of understanding. The prospect of countless yet to be identified life forms lurking in the darkness remains an irresistible lure for scientists and explorers alike. But the question persists: will we ever fully chart these mysterious depths? Or is the ocean simply too vast, too complex, and too hostile for any human enterprise to master completely? It's worth remembering that where sunlight cannot reach, Earth has found other ways to sustain life, from chemical energy at volcanic vents to the vast nutrient cycles that feed cold water corals. And in those deep places, in the darkest recesses of the abyss, entire ecosystems exist with no direct reliance on solar power, defying many of our preconceptions about what life needs. So perhaps the real marvel of the deep sea is not just its hidden wonders or the extremes of pressure and cold, but what it reveals about life's adaptability. Every dive is a testament to the resilience of living organisms and a reminder that Earth is still full of undiscovered corners waiting to be explored. As you reflect on the deep sea's boundless mysteries, consider how much more we have yet to learn. Perhaps the next big revelation lies just beyond our current reach, on some distant, silent stretch of seafloor that no human has ever seen. And in that undiscovered territory, we may find answers not only about the ocean, but about life itself, how it thrives, changes, and endures under even the most daunting conditions. In the meantime, the simplest step we can take is to remain curious. Each fact about the deep sea can spark new questions about our planet's capacity for life. And with every new submersible mission or ROV footage that surfaces, we edge a little closer to uncovering the truths hidden in those lightless depths. If there's one final thought to leave you with, it's this: the ocean, vast and dark though it may be, is fundamentally part of our world. As long as it remains mysterious, it also remains a frontier for discovery, adventure, and wonder. The more we learn, the more we appreciate how precious and extraordinary our blue planet really is.